It's Tuesday, July 7th, and this is now on HNN.
It's very disconcerting that there are 41 cases today.
A surge in COVID-19 cases across the U.S. and here at home raises questions about Hawaii's plan to reopen tourism.
Because people are very nervous.
This as we learn a Japanese travel agency is extending tour cancellations to the state.
They are risking their lives and their family lives as well.
As the economic crisis deepens, the Hawaii Food Bank vows to support families still struggling.
Our finances have been kept afloat by an infusion of more than $4 billion in federal money.
These stories, plus what the state is doing to fix the busted budget, coming up on This Is Now. Good afternoon. We got Jonathan and Ashley coming to you from the Digital Center. We want to start with breaking news. The state sees its highest spike in cases that we've seen since the beginning of this crisis.
That's right. Health officials are reporting 41 new COVID-19 cases today. The breakdown shows 38 of those cases are on Oahu, 2 are on Kauai, and 1 is on the Big Island. 9 of the Oahu cases are said to be a new cluster at a new gym. The statewide total now stands at 1,071. More than 70% of those patients have been released from isolation. And we just spoke to Lieutenant Governor Josh Green just a short time ago about the spike and his thoughts on reopening Hawaii to tourism.
41 is a disconcerting number. It's a reflection of people being out and about and not wearing masks too often. It's not from 4th of July. These are cases that people caught, 7 to 10 days ago. It's more a reflection of people going out to public places and gathering and not having social distancing. So we're seeing cases pop up from all across the state. Some are from travelers, but many, many more are from community spread.
I know we've seen a map of kind of where the different cases have been, and they're kind of all over Oahu specifically. Why is that concerning? I know it's better to have clusters because you know where they kind of are.
So there was one cluster, right? 9 were associated with a gym where people didn't socially distance or didn't comply with their instructor. But the other 30 plus cases were all over. One was from a hardware store, one was another food distribution company, not even strictly bars or restaurants. So when you have them spotted all over the place, that means that there's actually community spread. And they are getting some from contact tracing, but not that many. I think only 5 of these 41 for contact tracing, which means that the other 30 some odd cases could spark other little forest fires. And so we just have to have people be very, very smart about wearing masks and washing hands and know that we're in the middle of a pandemic. And I don't want to sound controversial here, but promoting large gatherings is a big mistake. Like what happened at Kalakaua Avenue. I know people want to get out and we want people to wear masks, but to promote larger gatherings is an error. Even though they've allowed for groups of up to 50, which I think is going to have to be pulled back, it's still the best thing to be in your little bubble through this time. We're trying to get through July so that we can see what comes when schools begin to reopen.
With the number of cases spiking not only here at home but on the mainland, do you feel that the plan to reopen August 1st is still going to happen?
I know that people are very worried about trans-Pacific travel. Probably will get delayed if I had to make a guess given the number of cases. But today we had 2,637 arrivals. We're not allowed to legally or constitutionally tell people they can't come. We can put them into quarantine, which has been confirmed by the courts. That's great, but it's hard to track those people in quarantine. So there are people coming. We don't yet have a full-on system to test people in advance, and it's not going to be foolproof. But most of the spread is just from these little clusters where we let our guard down. And the good news is we have not seen a surge at the hospital, thank God. But it usually takes time. The surges at the hospital usually come a couple weeks after because, put my physician hat on, people get sick, finally they have symptoms, it gets into the lungs, and then when they begin to get inflammation in the lungs, that's when people's oxygen drops down, and then they end up in the hospital. And so we could see after this wave, which we're getting right now, we could then see a wave at the hospitals. And so I really want people to be mindful of that.
How is the reopening plan going? Is there any movement with that partnership with CVS?
Yeah, we finalized the deal with CVS. We have a memorandum of understanding. They have the capacity to test at 1,400 places across the country. So that's in place. And we're working on Walgreens and others. You know, even if it doesn't open up that way on August 1st, I'm still going to encourage all travelers to Hawaii, if they have decided for whatever reason they're going to still come, to get a test. It's the right thing to do. We should prepare no matter what long term. I think that Hawaii should be a place, no matter whether it's August 1st or September 1st or whenever. I think Hawaii should be a place that prepares to have people get tested before they come.
Do you have concerns with giving travelers the option to quarantine here? Would you rather much have everyone pre-tested?
I think everyone has to be pre-tested. The problem is legally, you can't force a person to take a test. But if we want to really be serious about the quarantine, we set up a quarantine hotel and test the capacity of the court's ruling. That would dissuade people. If they came and they knew they were not going to get to go onto their bed and breakfast, their Airbnb, a hotel resort where it's pretty awesome and they can escape when people aren't watching, they'll do it.
At what point, does the state have to reverse and close the bars, close the gyms? You mentioned the Kalakaua thing, that event, those big events that draw people. When does that happen?
The big events should be backed off on right now. We should go back to 10 people at max. There's no harm in doing that because you could still do restaurant activities and so on. It just shouldn't be more than 10. We were doing very well at 10 people gathering, and that's important. When do you pull back? Those discussions are happening because it was safe to be out jogging in the park. It was safe to be out on the beaches in our own family bubbles. Those were, those were okay. But going to larger numbers and going into mixed groups, you're now mixing one bubble with another. And just if one person is sick, now instead of it being your group of 10 at risk, it's your group of 20.
Thanks, guys, for that important local update. But let's talk nationally just for a second. That's because the country has recorded nearly 50,000 new daily cases over the last week. That's the highest rate yet recorded. Many think of this as that second wave that experts have been warning about. But Dr. Anthony Fauci says we're not there yet. We're not even done with the first wave.
We are still knee-deep in the first wave of this. We went up, never came down to baseline, and now we're surging back up. So it's a serious situation that we have to address immediately.
The U.S. is on track to surpass 3 million cases in the coming days. Meanwhile, federal loans have helped keep thousands of local businesses afloat during this pandemic. Lacey Denise takes a closer look.
The U.S. Department of Treasury says more than 24,000 Hawaii-based businesses and nonprofit organizations applied for federal loans. Hawaii's portion of the federally backed Payroll Protection Program funds was nearly $2.5 billion, and the money helped to retain more than 225,000 local jobs. Majority of the local businesses that took advantage of the program borrowed less than $150,000. These loans will be forgiven by the U.S. Small Business Association as long as businesses use more than 60% of the money on payroll expenses and other essential expenditures like mortgages. Among the biggest borrowers listed in the $5 to $10 million range were FCH Enterprises, the parent company of Zippy's Restaurants, the Hawaii Prince Hotel, Hawaiian Host, Oahu Publications, the parent company of the Honolulu Star Advertiser, and Mid-Pacific Institute in Manoa. Just over 370 organizations took out loans of more than $1 million. For This Is Now, I'm Lacey Denise.
Governor Ige says the state has managed to stay financially stable over the last several months because of federal funding, but that money is about to run out. Now, to balance the budget, the governor says pay cuts, even job cuts, may be necessary.
Challenge the cabinet to really evaluate what they do and the services they provide, and really focus in on core services and those that must continue. And those that might be potential for phasing out.
Governor Ige says the state has already collected about $500 million less in tax income this year compared to last year, and the shortfall is expected to worsen, with projections showing a loss of $2.3 billion over the next 12 to 15 months.
Our finances have been kept afloat by an infusion of more than $4 billion in federal money. But the federal money is drying up. The Paycheck Protection Program, money that supported thousands of Hawaii businesses in keeping many of you at work, will begin to start to run out at the end of June.
That was Governor Ige speaking at a news conference yesterday. Joining us now to talk more about this is Daryl Huff, our H&N Managing Editor. Daryl, you know, in the newsroom, when you're talking about budget stories, these financial things, sort of a snoozer topic amongst reporters, but this seems a lot different and a lot bigger. Why should people care about our budget crisis right now at the state?
Well, I mean, it's a snoozer until you start talking about cutting thousands of people's pay, which is what they're talking about for state workers. When they start talking about cutting social services or other spending, when they start taking away tax exemptions that people have relied on for many years, when they start talking about reducing deductions of your state income taxes, that sort of thing, it really can have a direct impact across the board if it's not taken care of. The other reason is you just have, it's an indication of how bad it is, right? How much our economy is suffering right now. The reason that there's a big reduction in tax revenue is because there's no economic activity. So the excise tax, which is that tax that everybody hates, it's attached to everything you buy and everything you do, is plummeted. The TAT, the hotel room tax, obviously is practically down to zero. The governor did release some new numbers yesterday, which would have been just at the end of June, which is the end of the state fiscal year. And what's amazing is in the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year, we were doing gangbusters. They were looking at 8-9% increase in tax revenue. In 1 quarter, the quarter from March to June, April, May, and June, they ended up the year so far down, now the year is going to be 7% less than they had the year before. $500 million less in collections. And then from June of 2019, a year ago, they collected $644 million in taxes in June. This year, $483 million. That's $160 million less in taxes. So this is very real money that does not exist right now for state government to function.
And so you're talking about numbers that big and that much losses. Is there anything being done right now or anything the governor and the ledge can do to sort of make up for this?
Well, the big thing happening right now is that tons of federal money has come flowing in. The CARES Act money you keep hearing about, right? So total, I think the state got 1.2 or 1.3 billion in CARES Act money. Of various other aid programs, the Paycheck Protection Program was another several $billion. All in all, something like $5, $6, $7 billion has flowed into the state economy just from the federal government, just dumping, printing money, sending it out all over the country. But because of the gridlock now in Washington, it's really unlikely that that's going to continue. So for example, of the 160 or 170,000 people on unemployment right now, they're getting this thing called 600 up, an extra $600 a week.
Yeah.
That's an artificial stimulus into our economy right now. That ends at the end of this month. So they'll be back to regular unemployment. I think the legislature is considering adding $100 a week. But there's a cliff there that they're really worried about.
And another thing the governor, I noticed, mentioned yesterday, they haven't heard a lot about furloughs, layoffs, freezes. What about that?
So, okay, so right now there's no plan. Basically, the governor says doesn't have a plan yet, right? Everything's on the table is what people keep saying. Now, we're getting some hints, though. One, he talks about strategic cuts, asking the departments to review and look at their functions. Is there anything that we don't have to do anymore? Because there's other stuff we do have to do more of, like the contact tracing and testing and those sorts of things, that quarantine management. So there's going to be jobs in state government, but they probably have to shift them to save money. And ultimately, they might have to do some across-the-board pay cuts. We're also hearing this, the state budget director during his confirmation hearing was grilled on some of the other alternatives, and he said, we're looking at all these exemptions. You know, a business will get exempt from excise tax or something. Deductions, how much you can deduct of your income. You know, and then one of the things he said that was very interesting was they're considering going after the property taxes of the counties. Right now, the counties are the only ones that levy property taxes. A lot of states get their money from property taxes because that's where the rich people are, right? So they want to go after property taxes so they can have a more progressive tax system, but that would take a constitutional amendment, But still, they are talking about it. I've never heard them talk about that
That
before.
would certainly be controversial. And you said you've never heard him talk about that. But in all your decades of covering the state capitol, have you ever seen a budgetary crisis like this or anything that compares?
No one has.
No one has.
No one has.
All right, Daryl Huff there, keeping us informed and keeping us up to date on those important issues that sometimes we don't always get so excited about, but this obviously a big one. Let's toss it back over to Ashley.
The economic fallout from the pandemic still has many families struggling to pay for basic needs like groceries. Casey Lund is at the Hawaii Food Bank with information for those who still need help.
Being here at the food bank is really special because we've seen over the last few months the work that they do in action, helping thousands of families across Hawaii who are facing food insecurity, that are out of work and really, really struggling. I want to introduce President and CEO Ron Mizutani with us. Ron, tell me just a little bit about what's happening right now behind us here.
Yeah, so this is our staff on the front line, Casey, from day one, and I'm really grateful. They're packing emergency bags for families who are directly affected from COVID, whether it be someone positive in their home or not. This is going straight into Kalihi families, Waipahu and Wahiawa today in partnership with the county. So we're literally going to pack about 300 bags of food today. The needs are great, and as we've seen through since mid-March, they have not stopped. And boy, you look at what we've done as far as distribution numbers, it's humbling, but also mind-boggling. I mean, from mid-March to June, we've distributed 9.3 million pounds of food. We do 12 million annually on Blue Sky Days, which is never a blue sky day for a lot of families. Every day is a crisis. But we're seeing more people who have raised their hands because they need assistance.
As we're working to get the resources out to other communities, as you said, not Honolulu-centric areas like we saw at the stadium. That was a huge feat. But now we're really trying to push out, and not that you weren't before, but these resources to those other communities. Can you talk to us about how those 3 upcoming distributions are going to work as we put the details up on the screen?
Yeah, Casey, important question, because data shows that our Aloha Stadium distributions, which were massive, served an area kind of close to the stadium. It did spread out, but not to the numbers that we needed to reach on the North Shore, Leeward Coastline, and also in Windward Oahu. So this is our effort to push those into rural areas. They're going to be a little bit smaller in scale, but same impact. So the first one's coming up on Saturday, this Saturday. So go to hawaiifoodbank.org and you can register online, pre-register, so that you'll have a space in line. You don't have to wait in those long lines, and we'll get you in and out with quality food thanks to our construction industry.
Yeah, and $250,000, I believe, was the figure that you guys released, that they've stepped up. Really quickly before we go, I just want to give you an opportunity, Ron, to speak about the people that are behind you right now, the hundreds of volunteers that you've had step up in such a huge way over the last few months. How proud are you of these folks that have really stepped up in a big way?
Thank you for that, Casey. They're heroes. They're heroes. I can't put it another way, and I'm not overstating it. I mean, they are risking their lives and their family lives as well, being on the front line, and I'm very grateful. Guys, say good morning.
Hey!
Yeah, they're never skipped a beat, never questioned. How can I help? Like this morning's effort? What do we need to do? 6:30, boom, we're here, and we need to pack 300 bags. Volunteers the same way, never stopped. Some food banks on the mainland and also in Asia saw no volunteers. Hawaii was not that way. In fact, we had overwhelming response to volunteers. And the distributions coming up in our rural areas, all of that will be volunteered by the construction industry. So you're going to see a lot of young men and women out there with strong arms. And
they were just previously working 12-hour days.
Right.
Yeah.
But they never stopped working, and they understand that. So that's value there. But we got volunteers and my team, our team. I mean, heroes.
Ron, thank you so much. Again, hawaiifoodbank.org, where you can go to pre-register. It's very quick. It's very simple. I was on that website. It's very intuitive, user-friendly to do that. It doesn't take a long time. If you missed any of those details, we have them all online at hawaiinewsnow.com. For now, Jonathan Ashley will send it back to you guys in studio.
Thanks, Casey. New at noon, a memorial service was just held for the late State Senator Breen Harimoto. The Pearl City Aiea lawmaker died last month at the age of 66 after a long battle with cancer. The service started with a procession to the State Senate chamber. Flags have also been lowered to half-staff today in honor of the late senator. Japanese tourism is not coming back for at least 2 months. Howard Dykes has more on that.
JTB extends its total tour cancellation to August 31. In a letter to its business partners, JTB Hawaii President Tsuneo Ishida says the government of Japan won't permit Japanese travel to Hawaii until the mandatory quarantine for international visitors is lifted. Now, in recent years, more Japanese have flown here on their own, but most still come on tours, and most of those tours are scheduled by JTB.
Howard, we know the Japanese market is still #1 for the state. How significant is this JTB ban?
This involves most of the normal amount of Japanese tourism. They're a huge player, and our Japanese visitor traffic, ordinarily, mind you, is more than all other international visitors put together. So it's a very big deal.
All right, thank you, Howard, so much for that report. Let's get you outside to the weather, guys. The time is now 12:21. Here's Guy Hoggy with an update on your forecast.
How's it on this Tuesday? I'm Guy Hoggy with your HawaiiNewsNow.com forecast. No cyclonic activity in the Central Pacific. Here in the home, things are looking very quiet. However, we are looking at the third tropical storm of the season in the East Pacific, and it could likely become the first hurricane of the season. Right now, the winds are at 40 miles an hour, not all that strong. Christina's got gusts of 50 miles an hour, but slowly it's going to get stronger. It's in an area where development is favorable. The conditions are good. The water's warm. There's not much upper level shear. Expected to peak in intensity sometime on Friday, maybe up to Category 2 strength, and then it's going to encounter cooler water and it's going to fall apart. And if that happens, it will not pose a threat to us, although we could see some rain from the system in about a week. Now, this morning we're seeing some windward and Mocha showers. It's a little damp for some areas, but on the whole, those showers are of the light variety, and they won't amount to very much. Plus, the trade winds are blowing along those showers at a good clip. That really limits the rainfall accumulations. Everybody's going to get nice breezy trade winds, except for parts of the Big Island where it's going to be pretty sticky with some afternoon cloud buildups over on the Hilo side, the Kona side. So another gorgeous day today. Trade wind weather. High temperatures running to near 90. Very little moisture, just a few minor splashes for those windward and Mocha areas. Now the surf's on the way down. Small waves pretty much island-wide, shoulder high or below, but we are expecting a little bit of a boost coming into South Shores by tomorrow. And then later in the week, look for pulses to start building on the East Shore because of those breezy winds. We'll have more details on air and online.
Cool, thanks, guys. Let's see what's happening on the feeds today.
Heads up, you TikTok fans. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the U.S. is looking into banning TikTok and other Chinese social media apps.
What?
Pompeo's comments come amid rising tensions between the U.S. and China and as scrutiny on TikTok and Chinese technology firms continue to grow. Meanwhile, Apple wants its devices to take place of your passport, your driver's license, and other forms of ID.
Very cool, very
the
cool.
tech giant has filed 5 patent applications for the technology. They detail how a digital copy of your ID can be stored, transmitted, and confirmed, but the company does not use the word iPhone in the applications, but refers to devices.
I like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
Let's get to some more good news, Ash.
Right, so L&L Hawaiian Barbecue says there will be no 52-cent plate lunches this year to celebrate the founding in 1952. Instead, the popular food chain is giving away value pack meals. So this year, L&L plans to randomly pick 52 winners to get an L&L value pack, and it's going to be delivered for free. It feeds 4 to 6 people and includes barbecue beef, barbecue chicken, chicken katsu, rice, and mac salad. So July 20th is the deadline to enter at HawaiianBarbecue.com.
All right, that's going to do it for today, this Tuesday, for This Is Now. Stay with us for tomorrow. We'll be back. Have a good one.